Hello everyone, this is Ron Coleman. I'm the lead product manager for TrueSight Operations Management. Welcome to today's webinar on planning your migration to TrueSight Operations Management. I've also got Tim Bicardo on the line, who's the solutions architect out of the BMC Consulting Services. Tim will be doing the bulk of the presentation around how to plan your migration, giving you some ideas. But I'm going to kick us off, just kind of reviewing what the agenda is, go over some reasons on why to move to TrueSight, and talk a little bit about the journey we've had from a TrueSight perspective. We will be monitoring the question and answer windows, so if you have any questions out there, please post them on the Q&A window down there. We'll try to answer those as we go, but depending on the type of question, it may be a follow-up at the end, or we may have to get back to you at a later date. So to get started, from an agenda perspective, really just 5 key items we're going to go over. Like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about why migrating to TrueSight Operations Management, as well as presenting a conceptual architecture that's going to lead into Tim's session, which again is the meat of the conversation here. Tim's going to go over some upgrade migration paths depending on where you're coming from and how you're moving into TrueSight. Talk a little bit about a proposed phased architecture, or a phased approach. So walking you through kind of different phases as you move forward in your migration. And then also wrap up with some recommendations and best practices. So to start, why migrate to TrueSight? One of the things we're doing with TrueSight Operations Management now is we're moving to what I'm referring to as a application-centric, analytics-driven approach. And really the key to this is we're bringing together infrastructure and application. And so if you look at where BMC has been in the past and where we're moving to, we've really been fairly infrastructure focused. Now we've done some application monitoring and management, but it wasn't tied together tightly. So we're bringing infrastructure and application together. And some of the key things that we're doing with that is giving the ability to provide what we refer to as application context views. So giving you a view, an end-to-end view of your application and your infrastructure in the same console. So not having to swivel chair between a console showing synthetic transactions and active user transactions and then move over and say, hey, what's happening to the infrastructure, and look someplace else. It's all about bringing that together, giving you that one central point to look at the entire application. We're also adding things like data-centric analytics. So we've had behavioral learning for years where we've learned behavior of metrics and been able to generate probable causes off of those metrics. Now we're also looking at things like log analytics, being able to search across log files, just not on a single server, but across multiple servers that make up an application or a grouping of infrastructure, and be able to do analytics on those log files. So things like coalescing the data, understanding patterns within the data, automatically generating notifications and events that then feed into the existing probable cause analysis and behavioral learning. The other thing which kind of ties back into bringing application in is the end user performance metrics. So again, I talked about bringing synthetic in, bringing active in. Again, those are within the same view, but then additionally being able to take that information and drill down and give a code level inspection as well as the infrastructure metrics. So now we can not only look at database information, web server information, application server information, we can look at the end user information as well as all the way down into the code level and understand, there's a slowdown between the web server and the database server in this code. That's something that IT operations traditionally has not had. And then finally, it's a new user interface, really a new architecture, gives you the ability to do dashboarding, gives you the ability to have a mobile app. So we've come out with a mobile app that provides a interface into TrueSight that is great for those application owners that don't need all the details. They just need a red light, green light. They don't want to have to log into a server out there to get the information and parse through it. They just want something simple and easy on their phone. So a completely new graphical user interface, great new transparency to a wide number of users. So those are just some of the key things. There's lots of other capabilities within TrueSight, but those are really the key things that we're moving to. Now, when we look at the journey that we've had, so with TrueSight Operations Management, we've moved to an approximately every 6-month release schedule. And the idea is to be much more agile and come out with additional functionality on a much more frequent basis. The days of 12 to 18-month release cycles are no more. We have to move quicker. And so we released TrueSight 10.0. Again, that was a new user interface, bringing application context in, converging that APM. About 6 months later, we came out with some additional capability around dashboarding. We converged the IT data analytics, so we brought that much tighter in, providing dashboards into your analysis of log files. We brought in passive end user experience, so not only synthetic and the active, but passive into the platform. We recently released 10.5, where we came out with TrueOps, the mobile app. We started centralizing the management of knowledge modules, so the monitoring capabilities. We incorporated the service model views. So some key features that we've added every 6 months out there. Now, again, this isn't everything, just some key things that we've added. Now, moving forward, the next release is scheduled for next quarter. So we're coming out with a new release, 10.7, in Q1 of 2017. Again, staying with that approximately every 6-month release cycle. Now, if we start digging down into it, what this slide is intended to show you is really a conceptual architecture. And with TrueSight, we came out with a new architecture. And one of the key things with that architecture was separating the presentation and the processing. By doing this, we've been able to add things like multi-tenancy. So because we have a separate presentation layer from the processing layer, it's much easier to create a multi-tenant environment. And then the things at the bottom of here, you see like the Real User Analyzer, App Visibility Server, IT Data Analytics Server, the Infrastructure Management Server. These are all components that plug into the presentation server now. So when you're doing event management, when you're bringing in data from agents and you're collecting agents, that's all within the infrastructure management server, which is just a component plugging into the presentation server. You can add additional components. This gives us the capability to do things like potentially in the future bringing in middleware. And there could be a component for middleware out there that gets added into the presentation server. There could be a component for network monitoring added into the presentation server. A component for the latest technology, that's something new and exciting, we can just add it into the presentation server. So a much more flexible architecture to, basically add new componentry much easier and much quicker, as well as provide that multi-tenancy. So with that, again, just a kind of quick overview of TrueSight, what it means, why migrate, where we've been, high-level architecture, and with that, I'll turn it over to Tim to take us into the meat of the presentation. Tim?
Thank you, Ron. Hi, guys. I'm going to jump directly into the meat here of how to get from here to there. So when you're where you're coming from has a lot to do with it. I'm going to cover lots of paths, and then we'll talk about, how to get from one place to the other depending on what you have. So I'm just going to take this list as it is. So starting with the portal, if you have BPM portal today, which is the remote, the agentless collection, then you're on version 2.x, whatever that is. I think it goes up to 11 today. There's two ways to get to TrueSight. One is you can actually integrate the portal directly into TrueSight. You can pull the data, so you can still do the analytics on that data, or you can convert to or migrate to Patrol remote monitoring, because as of a few releases ago, Patrol has the ability to do basically the same thing that the portal is doing. The benefit there is all of your data is now Patrol data. The portal hasn't really had a lot of changes in the past several years, and it's not our strategic direction. So at one point, you probably want to do that anyway. But as far as getting to TrueSight quickly, you can put that on the back burner and just integrate with the data today, and then later think about migrating. If you're on Patrol, 3.x or 9, any of the 9 versions, and using the Classic Console, you don't really need the Classic Console anymore. The first thing I would suggest is, well, you're probably integrated today, if you have BPPM or BIM, through one of the adapters, either BII4P or the Event Management KM. So you can continue doing that today, and you can do that during your migration while you upgrade your agents, which is what you really want to do, is upgrade your agents to version 10 and then integrate via the integration service node. You had those in BPPM. You still have them in TrueSight 10. But as far as your events, now the other thing about Patrol is some of the data, that is the metric data, you want to come in as data so you can run the analytics against it. But the availability and the log data, which it doesn't really lend itself to analytics, you really want to bring in as events. So the thing is that you no longer need the adapters with the Patrol 9 and above. You can do this with what we call direct events, which is the ability to sit for Patrol to send events directly to a cell. For your older versions, we'll talk about that in a little later, but you may still need to hang around with one instance of BII4P or the Event Management KM. As far as managing the Patrol agents, in the past you had the Patrol 7 architecture, you had RSMs, and you used Patrol Configuration Manager. All of that can be replaced with the Central Management Architecture, which is a built-in piece of TrueSight 10. We introduced it around 9.x of BPPM, but it's been maturing along with the product, and it's pretty much a complete replacement for PCM these days. That gets Patrol over. If you got BIM or SIM, 7.x, hopefully you're not on 5.x, but 7.x using Impact Explorer as your GUI, that pretty much goes away. The BIM, all of the BIM functionality still exists in TrueSight, and you still have cells, you still have MRL and Baroque. None of that's really changed at all. But what's really changed is the GUI. So all of the Impact Explorer functions need to be migrated, and that means, if you're doing the remote actions, if you're doing collectors, filters, dashboards, any of that stuff, you've got to get it over to the TrueSight 10. That is the TrueSight presentation server. If you got Proactive Net 7.x, I don't think there's a whole lot of those left out there, but Proactive Net, basically, you really want to start over. From 7.x to 10 is a really long way, and you no longer would use the Proactive Net agents or any of the data collection there. You'd switch to Patrol, so it's really a migration of product to product. BPPM 8.x or 9.x, again, the suggestion is to migrate to new servers. You're going to add the presentation server. That's the big difference between BPPM and TrueSight. But if you're at a version before, I'd say 9.6, probably even before 10.0, you're better off installing new servers, starting over, and just migrating over all of your event management and monitoring configurations. If you're on TrueSight 9, 6, or 10, you have the option of an in-place migration, or I'm sorry, an in-place upgrade. With 10.0, that makes more sense. With 9.6, the thing is that you have to migrate each release. So you'd have to go 9.6 to 10, 10 to 10.1, 10.1 to 10.5. At that point, it's kind of worth just doing a migration. If you have TMArt, Application Diagnostics, or EUEM, or they were actually packaged together as APM 2.x, I believe 2.7 was the last release. Any of that, it's pretty much a migration. So the APM 2.x doesn't plug into TrueSight. You'd really have to reinstall it either way. So there's various methodologies there, and we'll talk about a few of them. But it's not going to be an upgrade in place. Okay. So how do you get there? Basically, you just got to have a plan, right? So the first thing you do is you plan all of your infrastructure and migration upgrade. Actually, the first thing you do is you take an inventory. We'll talk about that in a minute. But then you plan your migration and upgrade. You plan your event integrations and how your GUI is going to upgrade. Remember I talked about the BEM going from IX. Same thing happens with BPPM, by the way, because now that you have the presentation server, it's an all-new GUI. So you have to figure out how am I going to get that functionality into TrueSight. You plan your agent and KM upgrades if you've got the patrol agents. You identify, and this is very important, identify all the risks and how you're going to mitigate those risks. So what can possibly go wrong? What am I going to lose? What am I going to gain? What am I going to, where can I possibly mess it up, right? And then you figure out how you're going to get around that. Then, of course, you plan how am I going to deploy in production. And what I mean is, am I going to build everything in a dev environment and then just do a knife switch cutover, or am I going to do a phased approach where I replace one piece at a time? And if I'm doing a phased approach, how am I phasing it, right? Am I doing it by location, by customer, by user, by what? Then, now that you got all your planning done and you're ready to go, you execute the platform upgrade in the dev environment, hopefully, and validate it, make sure everything works. That's just the platform, right? Make sure you install TrueSight. TrueSight is humming along, but it's basically idling at that point. Then you upgrade all your event integrations, validate all of that, make sure all the events are coming in, they're displaying properly, etc. You upgrade your agents and your KMs, validate all of that. Now this can be a phase, or like I said, it can be all at once. But now that you're completely over on TrueSight, you can start to implement some new features. And that's when you really drive the business value of having TrueSight. Here's another way to look at that, and that is that you start with the foundation. Again, the design is the first thing, right? But then you install your platform, make sure your platform's solid, go to the enterprise console, and the user interface, and then you upgrade your components, your event management, agent upgrade. So what we've done, I think I've covered this on the next slide, in several accounts, is say phase one is let's just get on the new TrueSight platform and forward all of our events from the old system, whether it's BEM, BPPM, or Patrol, into the enterprise console. And now I've got the GUI. I have my users on TrueSight, and this gives me time to now go back and upgrade the individual components that are under the cover. So I upgrade all my cells, my event management workflow, I upgrade all my agents, and then and of course the thresholding and all of that, and then I upgrade my application visibility components. And at that point, I'm completely on TrueSight. I can decommission the old servers. And now I start thinking about how am I going to extend the solution by doing whatever, intelligent ticketing, service modeling, automated resolution, sky's the limit, right? Okay. When should I use a migration versus an upgrade in place? Okay, migration to new servers, that is. So I sort of talked about it a little bit already, but if the source is BPPM, BEM, or Patrol, that's a great reason to migrate to new servers because it's new anyway. If you're doing a hardware change, OS upgrade, or a database change, and that means you're going from Sybase to Oracle or vice versa, in any of those cases, you really have to do a migration at that point. There's no way to upgrade. When you upgrade, if the source is TrueSight 10, basically 10.0 or 10.1, or you have to keep your historical data. So and we're talking about short-term historical data that's stored in the BPPM database. If you need that data and for the analytics, you just have to have it. Then you really don't have a choice except to do an in-place migration. But like I said, depending on how many releases you're going, it may be several migrations. And since we're only talking about usually about 30 days of data or so. It's really, I haven't really found a compelling case for needing that data. You know, you're better off installing the new TrueSight servers, get everything hooked up, and just collect the data. And within, you know, a week or so, your analytics are going to start kicking in, and it's probably going to take you a week to migrate anyway. So there's really, like I said, hasn't been a compelling case for doing the in-place migration or upgrade. The other thing is that for the longer term data, you're probably using, or you should be using, TrueSight reporting. And in that case, you're exporting all of your data out to another database anyway. And that data is kept across the migration because you're connecting to that database. So some pros and cons for migration. If you're doing the migration to new servers, this is a great opportunity to optimize, to refresh your configurations, to rethink some things, right? Am I really doing, let's say, my cell architecture correctly? Am I really doing monitoring correctly? Maybe it's time to start using policies instead of you know, direct thresholding, that kind of thing. The other thing is you can do a single cutover for the users, right? You don't have multiple things going at the same time, and there's very little downtime required. It's just because, you know, you basically, when you're ready to switch, you switch from one to the other. The cons are you need the parallel environments, right? So you have to have the extra servers available during the migration, but once you're done, you give back the old servers. So it's a wash at the end. It's just that during that migration, you need two sets of servers. Like I said, you don't get the historical data, but that's recent historical data. You still get the reporting data. And you may need some modifications to the configuration, but to tell the truth, that's true in the upgrade also. So pros and cons for the upgrade. Of course, you don't need the parallel environments. It's a little bit less configuration. And what I didn't put here, it's actually faster if you upgrade in place if you're only going one release, right? Because you don't have to do all the installs and everything. You just run the upgrade scripts. And you can maintain your legacy integration servers, adapters, and agents. Okay. Now it's not something we really recommend because you really want to upgrade everything at once. And like I said before on the previous slide, when you're actually doing that migration, you can go top down, migrate the GUI first, then migrate event management, and migrate your patrol agents, and migrate your app viz. And while you're doing the patrol agents, you basically, if you're doing the migration, you have on the old system, you have your old ISNs. On the new system, you have new ISNs. And as you upgrade an agent, it moves over to the new ISN and starts feeding data up that side. You know, the old ones are still feeding up through the old way, and you're just getting events up on the DSPS. Some of the cons for the upgrade, again, if you're before version 10, you know, you're going to have to upgrade to version 10, and if you're before version 9.5, you're going to have to upgrade to that. So it may be several steps, and it's not just, hey, run the script and then run the script again. It's run the script, verify everything, and that may take a while. Fix any problems, then run the script again. And like I said, it can be a long process. There's also the fact that you're down during the upgrade. While you're running that script, while you're verifying it, you're really not doing any monitoring or event management with that server. The other thing is, you know, your user experience could be a little inconsistent because you're going from one thing to the next. If you're doing the migration, you know, you actually have the two servers, so you can get users trained on the new system while they're using the old one, right? And the other one is that, you know, all your undesired, basically your junk gets carried over, right? So that, you know, you don't do that optimization we were talking about over there. And there are data gaps, obviously, from the time that you upgrade all your agents, right? So now you're going to have data gaps either way, right? If you do the migration, then it's you're going to have to start over with your data, like we talked about, and then with the upgrade, your policies may need to be modified. Okay, so. Before you even start thinking about it, the first thing you should do is a thorough inventory and a health check, right? So look at your GUI. Remember, your GUI is going to change, so you need to look at any dashboards, any views, any remote actions, any collectors, all of those things that happen up on whether it's Impact Explorer or the BPPM console. Those things, you need to review all of them review them, compare them to what's available in the TrueSight presentation server, and then make a plan for getting there, right? Your integrations, not just your event sources, but your data sources, your CMDB, any notification you're doing, so any outgoing integrations to notification, ticketing, any automation you're doing, for example, automated resolution, anything with Atrium Orchestrator, all of that stuff, you need to view that and figure out how am I doing that and how am I going to do that with TrueSight. Now, it may be, especially for like the event integrations and a lot of the outgoing things, you really just, it's a lift and shifts, right, for the most part. But in some cases, some of the functionality may have changed, so you'll have to review that. Also, inventory your agents and your KMs, right? Where are my patrol agents? What versions are they? What KM is running on it? What versions are the KMs, right? And all of my monitoring configurations. So once you have that inventory, now you have a good handle on where you're coming from, right? And you can build that deployment plan. Update all your service packs if you're doing in-place migration, right? You want to make sure you're at the latest version of what you're coming from before you try to run those migration scripts. I'm sorry, the upgrade scripts. Verify all your scalability, and that's really more for, well, actually that's true whether you're doing a migration or an upgrade. You've got to make sure that the hardware you're going to be running TrueSight on is able to support it, and not just what you've got today, but where you see yourself going in the near future. Because if you're going to run out of juice in a month, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Another point here is the Amigo program, and that's a program that we run with customer support, where you can open a support ticket and say, I need help upgrading, and you register. That registers you into the Amigo program. You get a call from customer support. They'll help you out with some of the steps. They'll review your plan. They'll look at your proposed architecture and sizing, and give you some advice around that. Now they go a certain way down the road. If you want to go further down the road, that is, get help through the entire upgrade process, then you've got BMC Consulting Services. That's where I live, and we will help you all the way through that journey, even into what we call day 2 operations, which is making sure that after you go live, you're still good, and you can handle the new things, your users are okay, all of that is covered. Once you got your plan, you architect and design the new environment. If you're migrating, even if you're not, you need, like I said, you need to verify that the old environment will support the new product. You create a production deployment and adoption plan, like we talked about. How are you going to cut people over? Are you going to phase it, or are you going to do it all at once? How are you going to enable your users, right? Whether it's the operations folks or the technical people that are logging in to get information, make sure all of those people are able to use the new system, right? Make sure you have a good backup, right, before you upgrade. So just some general considerations. I hit the wrong button. I should have hit next. Anyway, hit some general considerations. Like I said, train all your users on the differences in the new UI, and especially it's not just training from BMC, but it's also training from you, because how have you implemented that new UI? Have you built any dashboards? Have you built any automation? Avoid using old technology with new technology, right? And both of these bullets really say the same thing. Don't mix and match old patrol agents and integration servers or even cells with the new platform. Try to get all the way over on the new platform. And there is that one exception I talked about earlier, is that if you have older agents that can't upgrade, and there's a few examples of that, so iSeries, Windows 2000, so certain versions of the agents, there isn't a 10.0 version available. You're still going to be running a 3.x, or probably 3.x, or maybe even 9. But at that point, you can't connect it directly into TrueSight, so you have to go through an event management KM. Don't use BII4P with 9.6 or 10.0 agents, with the new ones. If you've got the new agents, go ahead and convert to direct event propagation. It's so much easier, and you don't have to maintain that BII4P architecture. Don't try to upgrade everything all at once. Instead work in groups. So identify, whether, you say I'm going to update all the the Phoenix agents first and then all the Dallas agents, or whether you say I'm going to do all the Windows and then I'm going to do all the Linux, or whatever, right? Group 1, Group 2, whatever those groups are. It's much easier to chew on one piece at a time. And like I said, what you do is you have parallel environments if you're doing the migration. So you have your new integration servers connected to TrueSight, your old integration servers connected to BPPM, and as you upgrade an agent, you unhook it from BPPM and hook it into TrueSight, and then you can start using CMA to push your policies, and you gradually migrate things over. To the end user, it's mostly invisible, but of course you'll add functionality as you get to the new TrueSight. Don't attempt to connect older patrol agents to a newer integration server. I think it's actually allowed, but we've had lots of problems with people trying to do that. So I included a data flow just to show you sort of the TrueSight environment and where it lives. What I'm going to do is just go over this. Now TrueSight's sitting in the middle, TrueSight Ops, that is sitting in the middle. And I'm going to take this from the bottom right and work my way across the bottom up and then back across the top just to show you. I'm not sure, I don't think you can see my pointer. So bottom right, we got ZOS mainframe. So whatever's going on in the mainframe, we actually have a suite of products called MainView that monitors and manages those things. Your DB2s, IMSs, KIXs, and network, and all of those things. And we've got an integration called BIIZ, which is a direct integration from MainView into TrueSight for sending events. And the events, are populated with the slots and everything, and it's a two-way integration. So really pretty cool. If you have applications you need to monitor, there's actually a couple of ways to do that. So we have App Visibility Manager, which is actually sort of 3 or 4 products in one, but we have the active monitoring, the passive monitoring, and the synthetic monitoring. We also have the deep dive analytics for the data that you're gathering. But you can also monitor that with TrueSight Pulse, which is our SaaS offering. The quick and dirty implementation. It doesn't have all the features of TrueSight, but it has it's a quick way to get a win on application monitoring. And both of those, by the way, in fact, all 3 of them, everything I've talked about feeds its data and events up into TrueSight, right, for processing. So the next thing over is your infrastructure in the dark blue there. That's your classic patrol monitoring. That's what we've been talking about. There's KMs for, server, VM, cloud stuff, storage, hardware, web server, all of those kind of monitoring you can do with patrol. Middleware, we use TrueSight Middleware Management. And it monitors your data powers, your web servers, your web services, your web sphere is what I'm trying to say, and WebLogic, and all of those middleware items pushes events and metrics up into TrueSight. For your network monitoring, we have a third-party product called Intuity that that's part of the TrueSight suite, collects all of that data, and again, pushes metrics and data up into TrueSight. And I'm going to skip the little box in the corner there and go straight to ITDA, and that's our new piece of TrueSight that does log monitoring and analytics. You'll notice I got an arrow going into TrueSight. I've also got another one coming out that says RCA, and that is because once you've gotten all of those events in there and combined it with the events from all of those other things across the bottom, you can also look at an event in TrueSight and say, wait, I want to find out what's going on and what else was going on at that time, do some root cause analysis, and that's where I right-click and launch into ITDA, and it allows me to search through massive amounts of data to find other things that might correlate with the problem I'm having and help me solve it. What I skipped over down at the bottom left is your third-party monitors, and used to be that we said, well, whatever you can't, whatever you're not monitoring with PMC, we can at least pull the events in from your other monitors. That's still true, by the way. You have MSIN, which is your command line integration. You have event adapters for doing log data, doing IP streams, doing all sorts of things. You've got a SCOM adapter. You've got other off-the-shelf adapters, and of course the BMC portal. But the other thing we have now is what we call the data integration KM, and that's and then there's another one coming out hopefully at the beginning of the next year. But both of these will allow you to pull data, not just events, into TrueSight. And the difference, of course, being that if you have data, that is metrics, coming into TrueSight, you feed them into the analytics engine, and then you can do the baselining and the predictive alerts and all of that fun stuff. So now, if you don't want just events from those other monitors, you can get data. And if you have you've got homegrown scripts, you've got third-party monitors, whatever it is, you can bring that data in through that integration KM. Okay, so I'm going to go up and to the right now. Now, once you get into TrueSight, I show the presentation server, event management, and the analytics and baselines, right? So the data's coming in. If it's events, it's coming into that black box, and we're doing the analytics against it and generating events. If you've got events coming in, they go directly to the cell, and now all our events merge together. You do all your event management, and then it gets shown on the presentation server, right? So if I go up and right, data coming out of TrueSight can go into TrueSight Intelligence, which is our also SaaS-based reporting and decision-making tool. You can feed all of that data into Intelligence and combine it with other data from other sources, for example, social data, etc. I'm not going to go into a whole description of what Intelligence does, but it is tightly integrated with TrueSight. We also tightly integrate with Atrium Orchestrator to do automation, and I'm talking about things like automated remediation, restarting failed processes, kicking off processes based on other things that have happened. All of that kind of stuff can happen, and it doesn't necessarily have to go through Atrium Orchestrator. It just tends to be easier that way. And then from there, Atrium Orchestrator, of course, can integrate to other products, whether it's ticketing products or notification or remediation. We also have a two-way, you'll notice, arrow with TrueSight capacity optimization, and that is that we send the data from TrueSight into the capacity opt, so it can do all of the capacity management, and we're using the same data. We don't have to have two sets of agents, et cetera, et cetera. But also there's an integration going the other way, and that is when capacity optimization sees that you're about to have a problem or running out of storage or something broke a threshold, it can send events back into TrueSight also. So that's why that's two-way. We've also, that black box on the right is all ITSM, the remedy world. We got several integrations in there actually. So we pull data from the CMDB, and we use that to do association with events and monitors, so that when we actually do cut a ticket, we can be smart about it and tie it to the CI that's having the problem. So, and the main benefit there is that it makes it much easier to route that ticket, right? So if a ticket comes in and it's attached to a Unix device, for example, you send it off to the Unix support team. If it's attached to a Sybase database, you send it to the Sybase support team, etc. Okay. We've also got an integration with change management. There's actually two integrations with change management. One is that when a change is scheduled and approved against a CI, then we can send an automated blackout request over to TrueSight to say, hey, black out that CI during the change window so I don't get false alerts. And that way, in the past you've always had to manually create blackout windows. And the other thing is for root cause analysis, that as you're trying to figure out what's going on with the problem, you can right-click and do the probable cause analysis, and it will show you recent changes against that same CI. So I think that pretty much covers the architecture and how the data flows. So basically, I'm pretty much done at this point, except of course the Q&A part. But There are places that you can go to get more information, right? We have extensive customer education. There's web-based training. There's online instructor-led training, classroom training, and actually, we can come on site and either teach one of our standard classes or customize one for you. Consulting services, we have an upgrade planning workshop. It's a 5-day offering where we come in and do basically the same analysis I just talked about and produce a report and a deployment plan for you and a roadmap to show you how to get there, listing all the migration risks and all of those sort of things. We can actually do the upgrade for you. And like I said before, we can do day 2 operations, and we even have a managed service offering where we can just take over the entire management of TrueSight if that's what you need. There's also what we call IT transformation workshops, and that's where we talk about process and adoption of capabilities and the bigger picture in that case, people, process sort of things. The customer support we can do standard or Premier support. You get a little bit more with the Premier, obviously. And like I said before, we have the Amigo program to help you get there. There's also online doc. Hopefully everybody on this call knows about that, but that's how to get there, docs.bmc.com. And BMC communities, which if you're not already a member of, I strongly suggest you do that, communities.bmc.com, and that is how you interact with your peers, and not just your peers, but also, pretty much everybody at BMC is on there. So you've got your engineers, you've got your developers, you've got your support people, you've got your consulting people, you've got the pre-sales, technical and non-technical. So basically, if you want to ask a question like, hey, who's tried this before and who's having problems, you're going to get a lot of answers in most cases, unless you're trying something really, really weird. So that pretty much covers, the fixed portion of this. I don't know, Ron, you haven't interrupted me with any questions yet. So.
Yeah, you were going fine, and I was typing in, trying to answer as many as I possibly could.
Oh, okay.
So a couple that I'll point out here, and tough to go back to exactly where you were, but when you talked about migrating, does that mean an over-the-top, or did you mean an over-top installation or a separate installation plus copying the data?
I was trying to use, and I should have probably defined my terms a little better, but yeah, when I said upgrade, I was usually talking about in place or over the top. When I talk about migration, I'm always talking about going to new servers. And you can tell probably by now, if I haven't said it loud enough, that in most cases, I'm a big fan of migration to new servers. There's just so many reasons, because you get to clean up and start over and get rid of all your junk, and you don't have to go through multiple iterations. It does take longer, I'll tell you that, and in some cases it's more steps. But I'm always a big fan of migration to new servers. Now, if you're really good, go ahead.
I was going to say, in a related question, that when you migrate, the question is, can the data be moved? And I think it's probably depending on what the data is, but that's another question that we have out there.
That's true. There's lots of data. So if we're talking about configuration data, then in most cases that's absolutely true. Like I said before, the event, the knowledge bases, which is your Baroque and your MRL and all your rules and your executables, all of that you can just pick up, pretty much drop it on the new system. That you have the same cell structure, everything's the same from the BIM point of view except for the GUI, right? So now if you're doing some remote actions and local actions, some of that, collectors and stuff, you'll have to do a little bit of modification there. But most of that data just goes straight over. Now, if you're talking about performance data, that's what we were talking about during a migration. You don't do that. So there's never been a way to dump that data from the BPPM database and load it back into whether it's a new BPPM or a new TrueSight database. So, but as I said before, if you within about a week of being up, you're going to have all new data anyway. So it's not like you're losing a lot. And if you're thinking about more in the long-term data, like, well, I want to see what I was doing a month ago, that's not going to be in BPPM anyway. It's probably going to be in your reporting engine, which is an export that you do every day. So in that case, you will save the data because even if you upgrade BPPM reporting, you'll save that database. But that data is not in the BPPM or TrueSight database. I think I answered that question.
And Tim, I'll put you on the spot here because I'm not sure. The version of Remedy, we support 7604, I believe, is the version the lowest version we support with TrueSight. Do you know off the top of your head if that's correct?
And of course, we support it for different things, right? So there's a CMDB integration, there's the BSR, which is the auto ticketing, there's the change management integration, and I believe they're all. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure 7604 is supported anymore. That's getting pretty old, and I believe it's been deprecated. Yeah. So I do know that for sure, like 8.1 wasn't really a release. It was 8.0 wasn't. 8.1 was really the 8 release. And I know we do support 8.1 and of course the 9.0 and 9.1. With 7604, so in fact I just had this conversation yesterday with another customer, that they're going to upgrade their remedy to 9, but they're still on BPPM 8.6. But it's the same because they were thinking, well, maybe we'll do it the other way. We'll upgrade BPPM first and then remedy. So in either case, what we talked about is having a separate, whether it's a BPPM or TrueSight server that's just doing the integration. So if you upgrade Remedy first, you can just have a little mini TrueSight to do that integration, and you just forward all your events from BPPM, and vice versa. If you upgrade BPPM first to TrueSight 10, and you're still running on the old Remedy, you can still keep like an old BPPM cell out there that does that IBRSD integration until you have time to upgrade Remedy, in which case you can go to the new BSR.
And another note or question on data migration when it comes to migrating thresholds.
Okay, so that's yeah. So if you've got thresholds in BPPM, I believe you can. I wish I knew better. I don't know the process of getting those into TrueSight. I believe you can export and import those. If you're talking about thresholds that are specific to Patrol, which you're controlling with Patrol Configuration Manager, you can actually still use Patrol Configuration Manager in the new BPPMs. And since all of those thresholds are saved at the Patrol level, then upgrading TrueSight isn't going to make a difference there. But yeah, at some point what you'll want to do is migrate to CMA, and that's it's not really a like for like because you're going now to more of a policy base, and it's really something that you got to sit down and kind of plan out. And there's no like conversion utility. It's just something you just gotta do. Got anything else for me?
I'm reviewing them right now. Some of these we're going to definitely have to follow up on. Custom developed KMs,
okay.
Current CMA and things like that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So remember I said that one of the big steps that you need to do in the planning process is to identify all of your risks, right, and your issues. And one of those is custom KMs. So custom KMs should run fine on an upgraded Patrol agent. And you're still going to be collecting the data, you're still going to be producing Patrol metrics and alerts, and you can still send them up to TrueSight, right? What will be different, or what's the risk, I guess, is that The newer KMs and the ones that that BMC has upgraded are all going to be CMA compatible, which means that when you're using CMA to create your monitoring policies, you can go against these new KMs. But if you wrote a custom KM and didn't write the capability for it to be CMA compatible, then you're not going to see it in CMA, right? So there's actually a process, and there's actually a white paper, I believe it's out on Communities, that talks about that whole process of what is it that you need to do to a KM to make it CMA compatible. And it's not really rocket science or anything. It's more about knowing what to do. So if whoever asked that question, if you can't find that white paper out on Communities, then just send us an email and I'll find that for you. So I believe my email was on the invitation, but it's tim_bocardo@bmc.com.
And related, also that question was about PCM rules in the CMA.
Yeah, that's sort of a non sequitur there. So PCM rules live in PCM, and CMA rules live in CMA. And so that's what I was talking about before, is that it's not like for like. It's not even one for one. It's a different way of doing monitoring. So what you should do is take the inventory that I told you about before and get a handle on what it is you're really monitoring and what it is you're trying to accomplish with your monitoring, and then go over to CMA and design it there. But with CMA, it's more, it's some people say, oh wait, with CMA, I've got to have a separate policy for every server, and it's like, no, that's not the point. The whole point is that you have generic policies, and for example, why would I monitor one Windows server different than I monitor another Windows server? And you might say, well, it's more important. Well, that's not how I monitor it, right? That's how I report on it. That's what I do with the events once I get them. But as far as how do I monitor it, then I should monitor pretty much all things the same if they're the same, right? Monitor my databases the same, monitor my Windows servers the same, my Unix servers, my log files, all of this stuff, you're going to collect the data the same. It's just what you're going to do with the events that might be based on its importance or how it's being used.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a difficult one at you that there's probably not enough time, but at least you can point in the right direction. When you're talking about TrueSight architecture and HA and DR. That's a whole webinar in and of itself, but
that is actually so. And here's the thing: if you go out to that documentation page, docs.bmc.com, and then on the top of the page, it's got products, and one of them is TrueSight OM, and you pick the latest version, and then it takes you into the actual doc, right? So if you just at that point just search on the word architecture, it'll take you to all of the things that talk about architecture. I believe it's in the planning section. And there's like a big write-up on high availability. And actually there's multiple write-ups on high availability, because there's high availability at different levels and for different components. So the TrueSight presentation server has that capability. The TrueSight IM server, which is sort of what became of the old BPPM server. TrueSight IM has HA. That's done still today through clustering, I believe, and maybe Ron, you can answer that, 10.7 or maybe the next release. Yeah,
that's
where we get to the application.
We're moving
to
it. Yep.
Yeah, so we're moving away from doing OS clustering and moving into more of the application clustering. We did that with cell technology even back in the BIM days. So BIM has had HA cells since version probably 7. And that's all application level HA, cell-to-cell failover. The integration servers fail each other over. They're basically, they stream the data anyway, so they're not really doing a lot of processing. But basically you tell an agent, send your data to this integration server. Oh, and if it's not available, send it to this other one. So that's the way sort of HA works there. The patrol agent itself, of course, doesn't have HA because if you lose the server, you lose the agent anyway. So, and the app visibility components also have, I believe, in the latest release, have some application level HA. Do you think I answered that enough, or do I need to go into any more?
Yep. Yeah, I think for the purpose of this, that's probably the best we can do. Could you talk a little bit about BPM reporting to TrueSight Operations Management reporting, events, and we're still using the business objects, but any insight you can provide there from a migration perspective?
Yeah, it's pretty much the next version. I don't think there's a lot of difference, right? I know that we combined, at one point we had separate reporting engines for patrol, or that is for monitoring and for event, and then I believe we merged those a couple of releases back. And once we're going to TrueSight, it's really the same thing. We're still, it's still monitoring data and event data going into two. I believe it's still two universes. But I think getting there is a pretty easy thing to do. I haven't heard of any problems anybody's had migrating to TrueSight reporting. Ron, I don't know about you.
Nope. No. Yeah. It's really. I mean, it really hasn't changed drastically. It's still business objects works the same way. So. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's basically a trivial migration, something you don't have to worry about.
Here's a good question that I do not know. Exporting the CMA policies. So like when you think about data migration, so you got, an old CMA 9.6, exporting that into 10.
Yeah, and that I believe that's a pretty straightforward operation also. And it's the same way that you would do if you have like a dev environment and a prod environment, right? You build your policies in dev, you export them, you import them into prod. And it's pretty much the same way from version to version. I do believe there's a little bit of, we add functionality, but all of that, honestly, there's one thing I forgot to say, really, maybe even at the beginning of this presentation, and that is the first thing you should do as part of your planning process is open up the release notes, right? And in there, we're going to highlight, hey, here are things that change. Here are new features, obviously. But the other thing is, here are migration issues, right? And so if, for example, there's an issue of getting CMA 9.x policies into 10.x, then they're going to be pointed out in those release notes. And it might say, oh, you have to do, you have to follow this special process, or make sure you, change things uppercase, or whatever the thing is you have to do, they're going to be laid out in those migration notes.
And another question on the custom KMs, I'm pretty sure this is fairly straightforward, but if they have custom KMs that are packaged as CMA enabled in 9.6, they're ready to go for 10.0, correct?
Yeah, there should be no issue there, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe there's no new requirements, right? Like I said, there might be a few new functions, but there should be no requirement. I believe, Ron, and you could probably answer this better than me, didn't we, weren't we going to do some CMA work with the REST API, either this release or next?
Yeah, so we have ability for the REST API around CMA, and one of the questions I see out here is related to the difference between version 10 and 10.5. There was really a redesign of CMA, which was a key thing for moving from 10 to 10.5. I'll also touch on the fact that 10.5 also gives us the ability to deploy KMs centrally from what amounts to CMA. So that was a difference when moved from 10 to 10.5 as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else, or I know we're coming up on the hour here.
Yep. Let's do one more. We've got several questions out here that we'll probably have to do a little research on. We've got your IDs. We can email you answers. But the question here is, could you please explain what TMM is on the data flow slide?
Yes, it's TrueSight Middleware Management, and it's it's also evolved from older products. So it used to be called BMM, which was BMC Middleware Management, and before that, there's actually two products. There's actually three products, but one of them was QPASA and one was QNAMI, which were the old MQ software before they merged with BMC. But one is a middleware monitor. They have agents. It collects data. It watches the queues and all sorts of things like that. And the other one is TrueSight Middleware Transaction Monitor, and that does transaction tracing, also agent-based. And yeah, I mean, the best way to answer that question is to go out to the BMC homepage and just search on middleware management.
Okay, well, we've got a handful of questions. We'll come back and provide answers to you folks that have submitted them that we haven't touched on. It is the top of the hour, and so Tim, thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and everybody that joined. Appreciate you joining the call, and I hope you found this valuable. It's obviously step one of many that, and step one of many other webinars that'll be coming down the pipe.
Thank you, everybody.